Noah Vosen.
This is Jason Bourne.
I was wondering when you were going to make this call. How did you get this number?
You didn't actually think I was coming to Tudor City, did you?
No, I guess not. But if it's me you want to talk to, perhaps we can arrange a meet.
Where are you now?
I'm sitting in my office.
I doubt that.
And why would you doubt that?
If you were in your office right now, we'd be having this conversation face to face.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 225 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always joined by my fellow super spies, Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
Hello, everyone.
Well, we can't confirm we're spies. We could be working anywhere.
Anywhere in the world?
We could be. Chris sounded like he was anywhere in the world a minute ago till he plugged in his microphone.
Sounded like he was from Bora Bora.
He sounded like, he was over to our correspondent on the streets of Ukraine.
Live via satellite link up.
Yeah.
Down a corridor somewhere.
So,
This movie's got me being paranoid about being listened to by other governments looking to kill me off for saying the wrong thing.
Yeah. Chris, Dave, get a rest. You're looking tired.
Yeah, I said, I mentioned one random word and it's some sort of code for some secret op. It's like, no, he knows too much.
He's off the
I don't doubt certain bits of conversation do trigger various recordings, but there you go. If you want to listen to my life, fill your boots, it's not that exciting. But,
you'll have a buzzword and one day you'll wake up and be like, oh, I must do this.
But anyway, talking of spycraft, what are we covering tonight, Becca?
Tonight we are wading our way, continuing on with our Bourne retrospective review series. Tonight we review the Bourne Ultimatum, or as I like to call it, the Bourne Invasion / the Bourne Manhunt, alternate titles that should have been considered for this film. Starring Matt Damon, Joan Allen, Julia Stiles, Edgar Ramirez, Scott Glenn, Daniel Bruhl, Paddy Considine and Albert Finney, who would later appear in Skyfall, plus there is also another Bond connection in the shape of Colin Stinton, who also appeared in Tomorrow Never Dies. Score by John Powell, and once again Moby's Extreme Ways, although this is a new remix, is playing over the end credits that I had done for the previous two films.
Right, Tomorrow Never Dies, let's just go on to that for a second. Did he play the guy who was on the boat when...
Who wasn't on the boat in Tomorrow?
Everybody was on the boat.
No, when Bros was in uniform. It was him they met, wasn't it?
He was, just before they do the jumping out of the plane, he's like, hold on, has he got any American markings on him? We're over Vietnamese waters, and he's like, yeah, the parachutes, the fins. So I think he's Professor Greenwood.
I thought he was the one. I thought he was the one when they found that the decoding device had sort of moved it off track. I thought that was him. But
maybe it's the same one. But yeah, I think his name's Greenwood. But yeah, he's like, have you got any markings on him?
I picked him. This is what 10 years after that, and to all intents and purposes, he looks about the same. So I was trying to place him from a film.
Yeah, I was like, I recognise that actor. I was like, where have I seen him before? So he's been in both a Bourne film and a Bourne film. So
the one I was actually struggling to place, in that I know he's super famous, but couldn't think of any of his films, was Scott Glenn.
Silence of the Lambs. Hello.
Silence of the Lambs, of course. I loved. He had a cameo in it, but I loved The Player, the Tim Robbins film from the early 90s.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a classic. Yeah,
Silverado, which I remember being quite funny, but I haven't seen it for years. He was in The Hunt for Red October.
Yes, so another one connection with Connery.
And then there's lots of other things where I've seen the film, but I don't know how big his role in it was because I can't remember him. So, I mean, he played Donald Rumsfeld in W, the Josh Brolin film, and I remember that. But for example, it's got a name for his character next to say Courage Under Fire, but I don't know how big a role that is.
No, that's it. It's one of those things.
Training Day, he played Roger. Well, who's Roger? You know what I mean? He didn't even get a surname.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like these sort of characters. They have a major role, but their names kind of get lost in sort of the meeting, lost in passing. Definitely, it's like I didn't know what Ramirez's character was called, and I was like, oh, but obviously, his name basically means peace, which is quite.
Most recently, he was in the Netflix Daredevil series.
I do think I saw that.
He was
Stick.
Stick. He's,
Oh, was he
he's
now?
Yeah,
Okay.
he's trained when he's trained to fight as like a young boy in that. It's Stick who does it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, didn't know that.
I've got a feeling Stick's blind as well, isn't he?
Yes, I
Ooh.
think so.
Didn't know that. I will
So
check it out.
the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, well, the Marvel Daredevil series, it's all been brought onto Disney Plus now, and they are bringing out more seasons, but we don't know yet whether it's going to be a continuation, a soft reboot. We don't really know. Will the events of the first 3 series be canon? We just don't
Yeah, it's
know
had
yet.
a few different reboots. And
From my
introductions over the years.
perspective, I thought the first series, along with Jessica Jones, was the 2 strongest things they did from those sort of 4 different series.
Jessica Jones was really popular when it came out.
It was very good as well, but the second series of Daredevil was quite dull, and I didn't bother with the third. But you know, now
I
Marvel.
saw the Daredevil movie, and maybe the first series of the TV show, and then Jessica Jones. But then David Tennant got a little bit too frightening for my liking, so I switched off.
Yeah.
But I need to go back and revisit.
Yeah. So yeah,
He
he's
was a really good villain, though, definitely.
He does play a very good villain, but you know, he plays a lot of. He plays very shadowy quite well. In that, like, he may not be a
does.
villain, but you're not sure.
No,
Like
there's,
Stick,
on
you know,
Netflix, there's a sci-fi animation called Final Space,
Right.
and he plays like a little green alien who looks really cuddly and friendly, but actually he's super villainous. So quite interesting watching him as Doctor Who, and then those kind of villainous roles. So just shows his versatility as an actor
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
as a voice actor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Anyway, this is the David Tennant cast.
well, yeah, though I was talking about Scott Glenn, to be fair. But
Actually, neither of those don't. Was that after we managed to kill off
oh
the
god, we
Matt
talked.
Zimmerman last
Right,
time?
folks. Anyone who's listened to us for a few years knows our track record of mentioning people, and like we did the Adam West Batman show, and he died the following
He
week.
died.
And we mentioned Bill
And Sean
Cosby in a
Connery
show, and
died.
he was arrested the following week. I don't know that, but I don't know if it was Bill Cosby. It was somebody else actually, and like so on. We have got a terrible record of mentioning people, and they die for the first time ever on a show. No, for the first time in years last year, because we have mentioned it once before. We talked about Thunderbirds at quite obscene length, and who died in the week, Becca?
Matt Zimmerman, so the voice of Alan Tracy, but then he was 80 odd. He was, getting on a little bit.
We're a bit worried because our next series is Clint Eastwood heavy,
Oh.
and he's like late 90s now or something.
I think maybe we should move him down, lower in the ranks,
What,
and
what,
somebody who's a bit younger.
Wait till he's 101, so he'll be safe. We'll just have to get on with it. Good luck to you, Mr. Eastwood.
Yes.
He had a good innings.
He had a good innings. What are we doing after that? Tolkien.
It
Well,
would be us that kills you.
I'm worried because I thought, because she did say that genuinely, even though we know it's not us logically. Becca was like,
there's
Becca
nothing
was
we
like,
can
do
do.
we
It just
move it?
happens.
And then I'm thinking, but it's Tolkien after that. What about like, I don't want to kill off Gandalf.
No, I'd rather not.
See, I think what's it? Patrick Stewart is probably more like to go before.
He's
he's
very
looking on a little bit,
frail.
isn't he?
He was doing really well till about 8-10 years ago, and now he's looking really, really old.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
it
he's
was the pandemic,
sounding
perhaps.
really, really old more than anything else. He's got that old person sort of quiver in his voice now.
Mm.
But yeah, so there's a cheery thought.
So yes, let's not do that.
Last thing on Scott Glenn, and I think it just speaks because it leads me into sort of my experience with the series, is that looking through his filmography here, he is in the Bourne Legacy. And I didn't remember that. And I think that's 2 points. I think firstly, when I saw the Bourne Legacy, I'd not seen the Ultimatum since it came out, so I don't think I put the two together. And now, 10 years on from the Bourne Legacy, I don't remember he was in that either. So I think that tells you a lot. I went to see the Bourne Ultimatum, and we'll talk about it a lot. This is so Quantum of Solace in places.
It is, yeah. I got so many like quantum vibes, got Skyfall vibes, even though that wouldn't come out for another few years.
There's 2 or 3 different places where it's very, very obvious. And
Well, obviously, Quantum came out 2006, and this came out 2007.
No.
Or the other way around, 2008, 2007.
Yeah, that's right. So bear in mind, Quantum came out in October, November, as usual for Bond films of the modern times. But they don't start filming until sort of December, January, and we know they were behind with this because of writer's strike and everything else.
Yep.
So put it this way, by the time they got costumed and on a set, They've probably seen the Bourne Ultimatum. So you can look at something like Casino Royale and say, well, I don't know if Batman Begins did have an influence. And, you know, a lot of films like that where they're a year apart, you just think, well, they may not have known.
No, there's a lot of similarities.
They did
It's
here.
that style of filmmaking as well, wasn't it? As you know, as you mentioned last week, obviously Bourne generally casts a long shadow over Bond anyway, and then obviously you've got the Mission Impossible movies coming out as well. So it's that similar kind of style of filmmaking as well, and plus it's something that Greengrass really cemented himself. I mean, here we see, you know, more of the shaky cam, more of the kind of more documentary style, more you know, going to ground in terms of, you know, the filming style of it.
Oh, we'll talk about that in
definitely.
my thoughts as well. I mean, my
There's
experience with the film.
there's some scenes, especially towards the end of the film, which do incur a little bit of like quantum-ish dizziness. So.
Yeah, I mean, but there are specific visuals I noted, and you know, and at one point he's in a hotel room and something happens, and I'm thinking he's going to jump into the car with Camille in a minute, isn't he?
Yeah, literally. There's definitely one quantum.
But he's even wearing the same jacket, or very, very similar to the one Bond is wearing in those scenes.
Well, indeed, because
there's a still.
Part of the film takes place in Tangier. You can trace it all the way back to Living Daylights in 1987. So
there's it's the jumping around on like buildings and crashing through windows, that kind of thing. It's
that's in Quantum, but also there is
and
a still.
It has the same kind of similar cinematography as well. It's got the same sort of look visually. It just has like the same colouring kind of texture.
Yeah, it does. It looks the same sort of textures to it, as you say.
There is a still of Daniel Craig in Quantum of Solace where he's a little bit beaten up. He's holding a gun in his hand. He's sort of covered in sand.
It's like he's loading it.
No. He's got it sort of just hanging down by his side, and he's got a slightly bloodied face. I'm actually gonna. I don't know. I was gonna share it actually. Hang on. Let's see if I can share it. I'm talking about this picture here. Can you see it?
Let's have a quick look on. Let's see.
Can you see it?
It's not come up yet. But this is fascinating for our listeners.
Anyway, forget it, because we could
I can just see a blank screen.
We could do that all evening. But the point is, the jacket he's wearing there is so similar to the one that Bourne's wearing tonight. My experiences with this film are purely that I saw it.
It's like a black bomber jacket, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just
that's
like
exactly it. But around the neck is similar. I saw when Jason put it on. But I saw it. I think I saw it opening night. I remember liking it a lot because it is like the Bourne Supremacy Part 2, really. But I do remember thinking it wasn't as well paced as the previous one. There were a few too many flashbacks, and I think, and it's confirmed it watching it today, the shaky cam has gone bananas compared to even the second one. It's noticeably more. Now I know that the cars only went over didn't go over 30 miles an hour in New York. You can see it. It's just being cut it's just being done with lenses and an enormous amount of cuts. And I don't think this is as strong as the previous film, but I still think it's a relatively satisfying ending to this little arc, if you like. What about you guys and experiences?
Oh gosh, I don't recall seeing this one at the cinema. I really don't. I think I skipped it and then went to see Bond the next year, probably. But yeah, no, I've obviously got it on home release, watched it a few times. I think for me, obviously there are kind of like better films in the series, but in terms of action, definitely, this is probably one of the most sort of quickest paced. It literally starts like on the media res on the hoof, and doesn't really let up really. So you're there holding your breath. You're going to they sold you the seat, but you're going to use the edge of it. Just to quote Tarantino, I know completely wrong series, but there it is. I watched it again for this one. I sort of split it over two evenings. And I was just literally just like all the way through, didn't take a breath until it ended like 2 hours later. And I think in terms of like obviously the love interest, I think with Nick just kind of like dragged a little bit, even though I as I said last time, quite enjoyed Julia Stiles. Quite like her as an actress. I did kind of feel like love interest was like perhaps a little bit forced. And especially when he sort of leaves her at the cafe in Tangiers, and like she doesn't say another word. It's like, oh, so it's a bit of a disappointment. But yeah, just in terms of like the action set pieces, performances, it's really tense. There's a real feeling of sort of paranoia, which just kind of engulfs the whole film because you're looking over your shoulder. But yeah, that's kind of why I call it like the Bourne Manhunt. or bits of like Quantum Light almost a little bit. So like plot wise is probably perhaps not the best, but action wise definitely for me it's a high point of the series.
I think I can speak to that a little bit before Chris gives his opening thoughts. I was reading around this film a little bit today, and I remembered that one of these films, one of these two, the Greengrass but 2000s ones, I remembered that one of them went into production without a proper script, and I think it was this one, because Tony Gilroy was contractually allowed or mandated, I don't remember which, to provide the first draft, but only the first draft of a script for this. And they had one of the nicest beefs ever, him and Matt Damon, because Matt Damon apologised pretty much immediately after this was taken the wrong way, because he said that the script he put in was unreadable. And he said, I don't blame Tony. He said I think he was mandated to write a draft, and he just knocked out any old toss.
Yeah.
Just to get it done.
Just
And he said, I can't blame him. They forced him to do it. He didn't have a lot of time. He tossed it out. It was awful. So they brought sort of Scott Burns and George Nolfi on board, and they sort of rewrote it as they went. And I think you can feel a little bit of that in that. I mean, I grant he wasn't as a big star back then, but Daniel Bruhl pops up and then he's gone. And then
literally, he literally has a cameo role, 5 minutes. I totally forgot that he was in this film.
I did.
I think I think obviously he in sort of Germany he'd been in sort of like TV shows and films and everything like that. And I seem to remember it was either 2004, 2005, 2006. A film called Goodbye Lenin. Basically, he's to kind of like shield a family member who was in a coma or something from reunification, and try and prevent, trying to put on that veneer of they're still living under communist Germany.
I've not seen it.
But no, check it out. And I kind of think it had a wider release definitely over here in English speaking territories.
I've heard of it.
I think that might not be correct, but it seems to be that's the sort of film that kind of brought it to more English speaking audiences.
But when you look at the film, you've got this bit. Now, I understand that's exacerbated in that this is 2 years before Inglourious Bastards.
Oh god, yeah, of course, yeah, that was another film that brought it to
It's
prominence.
6 years before Rush, I think, if I can remember when Rush was accurately. So he's pretty much a star now, and he might not have been then, but because we're looking back on him now as like he's been a Marvel
since
yeah,
well,
exactly. Since he's done all that, you now look back on it, and it makes the film feel a bit more scattergun because. He's a relatively big star in one scene. Paddy Considine, he was already, the De Niro of the Midlands,
mid-2000s.
He was a name by this point, and
I
he
totally
pops
forgot
up
the
and
credits.
pops
David
off.
Strathairn as well. Like he's got a major role. This is the sort of film that kind of brings out the big guns, as I wanted to say.
But I don't think David Strathairn.
It's like
David Strathairn. They didn't have an equivalent in the second film, really. He is kind of the equivalent of Chris Cooper in the first film.
Yeah, he's that kind of character.
As an actor, I rate him just as highly. In this,
he's named for kind of really dramatic.
I think he's a void in this compared to Chris Cooper in his. Mm-hmm. And so the film
use
feels
him very sparingly.
The film feels a bit more scattergun, and then suddenly, after 2.5 films, him and Julia Stiles were in love, were they? Or that didn't,
I don't sort of feel there.
That didn't earn it because the first film, when he appears back on the grid, having been thought dead, she has no visible reaction whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now that might just be she's extraordinarily professional, but the film didn't find any way to let us know. And then I just think my final point there is just, and the other thing was. The shaky cam when I revisited Supremacy, expecting it to be Quantum of Solace levels of whip pan editing and just all over.
I thought there was one scene that was a little bit like that, but otherwise it's
Supremacy
typical Greengrass
was like it's like I don't know. It's like the first person ever to do slow motion. You go back expecting it to be really bad, and you know that people.
And it's actually really fresh and amazing.
Yeah, and I thought Supremacy was that. This film. There were sections of this film where I was like, they're overdoing this, and they're almost shaking the camera an extra bit just to add more.
Extra bit of shaking.
So I think this is Bourne Supremacy light, but I still enjoyed it. Chris, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I generally agree with what everyone's saying here. The shaky cam, I did think it was too excessive. I know it's
particularly in New York. When they get to New York, it's really bad.
Well, I was just thinking, like, the issues that shaky cam has had, especially when it comes to action films, is you kind of don't really see what the fuck's going on with the action, because when you got all these like skilled, like fighting fights gone on. You want to see like how how impressive like these people have actually do it. You want to see the stunts. You want to see like even the impressive work that the actors have actually sort of put in, and you feel like you want to show it off. And the shaky cam just kind of like ruins that. And I know that there's been issues with like as I say, Liam Neeson type films where it's used to kind of just basically cover up the fact that they can't do what they do. It's more of a cheat's way out. But yeah, I think it's like it doesn't do any of it justice, and it kind of like it makes the illusion of something is like visceral and like and that's all it is. It's an illusion. We're not actually seeing it, and you watch like films like John Wick, or I mean Christ, even some like sort of straight to DVD, straight to VOD kind of bog standard action films, which not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but at least fucking hell they get the action right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you can actually see the fights, and it's like
I think it's fresh. Literally the first time you see it, because like if Bourne Supremacy was the first of this scale of film, which I've, without really thinking back, I'm not sure if it was, but it certainly popularised it. The first time, and there's car chases going on, and you're struggling to focus on certain things, and then we're moving, and it actually does because it slightly agitates you watching it. It does sort of almost add to the excitement. It adds something. But of course, by the time every fucker's doing it, you're then at the point you get inured to it very quickly, and you just think, "Oh, calm the fuck down." By the time we watched Quantum, which was only about 18 months after this, it was like, "Will you just calm this down?" And with Quantum, it was covering scenes not making sense as much as anything else. Judi Dench appearing after she was like shot in the face, we thought. And stuff like that. But yeah, for shaky cam aside, what did you make of it? Just a bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I generally, I enjoyed it. I kind of, when we come to talk about it a bit sequentially, I do think we might struggle because there isn't a lot of plot. But to that, I think it's one of its, it's kind of one of its strengths and weaknesses. There isn't much actually in it. But the film as a whole is a kind of like, it almost feels like an extended like chase sequence. Like it always feels like it's 3 action set pieces just put together.
You should have said this. You should have said this. You should have said this like last week about this week, because then we could have moved the Thunderbirds discussion to this week. Padded the show out and not killed Alan Tracy.
Yeah.
Chris, you got blood on your hands.
I'm sorry about that. I can only apologise.
Well, the way I see it, he would have saved him like another 2 weeks.
If by miracle you're listening, Mrs. Alan Tracy, right?
This is Mrs. Zimmerman.
In your grief, just remember we made a couple of people laugh, so your loss is worth it.
I just also like to take this time to plug again the Jerry Anderson podcast. I can highly recommend listening to it. Give a follow to @JerryAndersonTV on Twitter.
And the good news is Jerry Anderson's already dead, so we can't do many
he
harm.
passed away. But you can also check out on BritBox the documentary A Life Uncharted, which is a very never before seen, containing lots of footage and also a bit of deepfake technology used in making of the film. So anyway, that's my little plug over.
Yeah, but how are they using deepfake technology?
Yes, I can't remember the actor's name, but okay, so there's lots of historical or previously unheard audio footage of interviews with Jerry on various subjects, and that's films and life and career and filmmaking, things like that. So what they've done is they've recruited an actor and used kind of like deepfake technology to kind of like place his face almost, so it's almost as if he is being interviewed. So like there'll be the figure of Jerry apparently like sat on the sofa with sort of 60s shows and like playing in the background behind him, and sort of it's a little bit weird. It's strange how to explain it, but it's always that what they try to do is try to present that this really interesting audio recordings that they have that again we haven't heard before, and as they use this deepfake technology and lay it over the face of another actor who kind of bears a passing resemblance. And for a lot of us in the fan community, we were a little bit like, but obviously Jamie signed off on it. It was
if they signed off on it, that's the key thing.
Yeah, exactly. And
I would never support anyone just doing it.
No, this is it, and it's kind of got, obviously there's a big schism between Fanderson and Anderson Entertainment, but that's another argument for another day. But JB signed off on it. It was fine. It's quite innovative technology as well. It's kind of similar to what we've seen with bringing back Leia and
Which I thought looked terrible.
in Star, but yeah, exactly. It's a little bit similar to that. There's a little bit of Uncanny Valley going on, but it's done it's handled in a very sensitive way. And there's a few moments where kind of the dialogue doesn't quite match what's going on screen, but it's done in quite a masterful way.
Okay.
And again, it's as if as if you're still alive and able to interview him, which is really interesting.
So if you'd like to see Jerry Anderson handled sensitively,
yes, check out this film, A Life Uncharted. So
the only thing I just want to say is
right.
BritBox. We're talking about British BritBox. Confusingly, BritBox launched in America first. So a bit like Netflix, different territories have different things. We're talking about the British catalogue. We're not sure if it will be on American BritBox or not.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I can't quite say.
But I did have a look around to see what's on there.
Need a VPN for that.
BritBox has all surviving original Doctor Who. Obviously, they wiped a lot of the tapes. They've got all surviving Jerry Anderson stuff.
Yeah,
which I
think
think
for Doctor Who, they're animated quite a few now. I think there's is it the Abominable Snowman or something that's coming? I
know they did animate one with Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor. Yeah.
Yeah, they've animated quite a few now, but yeah, they've got all the surviving ones and some audio. So yes, this is the Jerry Anderson spin-off and BritBox. Okay. Do you expect us to talk?
Nice bit of padding there, Becca. Anyway, Chris.
Let's talk about the Bourne Ultimatum. I don't want to. Basically, I don't want to go off on a massive tangent like we did last time.
Oh no, it made it a decent length.
So let's try and keep it
right.
down. Let's bring it back.
Like Chris said, there ain't much here in a minute. So, while I'm talking about BritBox, I was watching Drop the Dead Donkey earlier.
Oh god, that was a classic show, wasn't it? Oh my god.
I feel like I've just put 10p in Becca, and now she's gonna go for it. Off you go, Becca. Drop the Dead Donkey, Becca.
I think what we need to do is we need
old
to do
Channel 4 sitcoms.
Hey, Chelmsford 123's on there. Are you old enough to remember that, Chris?
Which was that?
Chelmsford 123. It was Hat-Trick
I
Productions.
don't know that.
I've never heard of that.
It was set in Roman times, right? And it was a lot of the same people.
Chelmsford.
So it was.
Was it Frankie Howard?
No, you're thinking of Up Pompeii.
That's not
That's
Pompeii.
in the 70s.
Yeah.
Chelmsford 123 was Hat-Trick, who went on to make.
Drop the Dead Donkey.
Yeah, and it had Jimmy Mulville in it, and it had Rory McGrath and Neil Pearson from Drop the Dead Donkey.
Oh god.
And it's on there, but I think it was 1990-91. So I'm just about old enough to remember it, and you'd have been too young. It was really good.
I'll check it out.
That's on BritBox.
Yeah, we should do a separate podcast. What we're watching on BritBox this week.
Yeah, we can talk about the Bourne Ultimatum on that one. Carry on, Chris.
Anyway, let's carry on.
Yeah, so what we talk about? Oh, yes,
How do we do
Bourne. So it's kind of like three action set pieces kind of put together, and the plot kind of sort of leans for that, and that kind of thing I kind of like, because there's not too much of standing around explaining everything, apart from a few lines of dialogue which has to explain a bit too much, but other than that, I kind of like it's kind of like relentlessness. Okay, let's just go, let's go. So I think that's what Dave kind of means by the pacing. The pacing just doesn't really feel like that with a shaky cam. Just feels like there isn't enough room to kind of breathe, assess what's gone on. Paddy Considine shows up and exits, and shit like that. But yeah, no, I quite liked it, though. I must admit, the thing that did take me out a bit was the shaky cam.
I was noticing it a lot more. I think I went into Supremacy expecting it to be bad, and then I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, there's a bit more restraint here than I remember. I think what I'd say is...
it was shaky cam heavy, but I kind of thought it was... Yeah, pretty much the same.
I know,
you can kind of see what's going on here. Obviously, he went in and did Supremacy. Everyone's like, oh wow, what's this? Oh, this is kind of cool, because everyone seems to like this, right? And then just completely just goes all in. And
Bond in recent years has always been a year or two behind everything, because it picks up on the trend afterwards. So I think it was already it outstayed its welcome by the time Quantum of Solace came along.
It takes so bloody long to make it these days.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, Quantum actually turned around fairly quickly, but you know what I mean. They always get an
Yeah.
artist to do the song 2 years after they were massive, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a little bit of that with Quantum of Solace. You go, oh, it was popular in 2008, and it's like, no, this is Bond. We were already pissed off with it by 2008.
Yeah, we already had enough. It'd already been done to death.
Well, I mean, just the problem is always a general thing with Hollywood anyway. They kind of there's no sense in copying, because what makes like Bourne more unique is maybe like, yeah, okay, the shaky cam, but that's their thing. It's like the cool kid at school. It's like if you start imitating the cool kid for like at school, then it's no longer cool.
It doesn't work.
It's not cool to do. It's only cool because it's like individual. So if you're unique in any way, that's the cool bit. So it ceases to be cool when you're just imitating someone else. It just doesn't work. But anyway.
Yeah, I think what I would say is the film. I mean, I know we had DVDs and Blu-rays and everything else, and perhaps people did watch Supremacy just before they headed out to the cinema, but I'm not sure I did. And I think Ultimatum looks a better film 3 years removed from Supremacy than it does 1 week. I would say that. I would say it's comfortably the weakest of the opening 3 films. I don't think it's the weakest we're going to cover, but it's the weakest of the first 3. I would definitely say that. And I think it was just when I first saw it, it was like the Bourne Supremacy and a bit more. The sheer amount of flashbacks to his time with Albert Finney kept knocking me out of it a little bit, but it was good. I thought it was like second half of the same film really. I think having watched them a week apart now, this is a bit of a step down from Supremacy.
Which is odd, because I remember like the reviews, like this is like 5-star on Empire, that kind of thing. People were considering this like the best one at the time.
Yeah, and I think I can say quite comfortably it's not. It depends what you're invested in. I mean, obviously, because Jason gets some answers and like a bit of an escape at the end. There's some sort of catharsis in it, but because you've got Julia Stiles is suddenly a love interest, or suddenly was a love interest, and they're pulling bits and pieces out of their arse, and that kind of affects how real you can find any of it. Because I can feel them trying to cobble together a film without a script here. I can feel them doing it. The end result is actually a miracle in that it flows pretty well. It makes sense. It's all pretty logical. It's incredibly well shot. I mean, it's of a piece with the second film. I'm not saying it's like it ain't Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Oh,
we're not talking about an abomination. It's not Highlander 2.
What is?
I was going to say, yeah,
it's
what
not.
is
I mean, it's of a similar standard, but it
You
is.
don't know.
But I don't think. If you asked me to argue this was better than Supremacy, I don't think I could put up much of an argument. That's all I'm saying, really. With that, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Yes. 30 minutes in. So, where do we start? We start
with
basically-
him leaving injured after he's talked to Kirill's daughter at the end of the second film.
Yeah, and he has another sodding flashback.
Yeah, it's a little bit flashback heavy, this series.
Well,
this film, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like because of amnesia, but everything's kind of led by his motives are led by flashbacks. It's like, oh, I have no flashback. I must go and investigate this.
There's one place where it actually ruins it, and I'll come on to that later. He hears something or sees something, and you see the images that flash through his head, which are always third person. They should be first person, but there you go.
Yeah, I found that a bit strange.
But that's always the same with
Yeah,
flashbacks. You see them seeing themselves. It's like, well, that's not what you would see in your head, is it? But fair enough. That's just a minor complaint. But there's one. It actually ruins something later in the film, and I must remember. Pamela gives him a coded message, and we'll come on to that later because it is like Bourne. It's Bourne for dummies at that point. It's like producers have panicked. Somebody in the audience won't get it when they've seen a rough cut, I think. But yes, he's having a flashback from when he first joined Treadstone. It's him in a very well lit, bright white room, and we're only picking bits and pieces up here. And we cut to 6 weeks later. and Pamela Landy's like listening to. This is our slightly clunky way of recapping the previous film for those who didn't see it. Whereas I think the Bourne Supremacy was very, very good at having the dialogue between characters serve both the plot and the exposition needs. So but it's a bit clunky here. But yeah, she's listening to. So it's remember this in the last film when it turned out he was guilty. That's what that is basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit like that, isn't it? It's a little bit of a flashback to that. It's like, hey, remember this? Oh, they just kind of it gets a bit repetitious. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? It's one of those kind of plot devices. I think is it Robert Key, sort of famous writers, has sort of written treatises upon it, saying this is how to do it properly, this is how not to do it. But it's,
it is difficult.
It is one of those tropes.
I think I would find it difficult.
I think there have been some great films over the years which have been entirely flashbacks.
But then there's ways where it's having trust in the audience as well. It's like because there's a bit, and I'm going way ahead, where like David Stratham and Scott Glenn are like on the phone, and Scott Glenn, it feels that like Scott Glenn's like is aware of it the whole time, kind of thing, and it's like, oh, don't worry, you're covered. It's like, well, we'll remember why Pamela's there. When
and then he spells it out.
Yeah, and it's like
he spells it out that she's there to take the fall.
It's like, but then he wouldn't say that if all he'd say is remember why Pamela's there. And it's like, right, okay.
It's like the start of The Godfather Fight 3 where he writes to his kids and says, remember when I moved to New York 17 years ago? Or something.
But it's like, you have to trust the audience. Like me as an audience would like, remember why Pamela's there. We would like infer, right, they're either using her as like someone to like basically sort of set up.
She's one of two. She has to be one of two things. You could only infer, and I think the one of the two is obvious. But you could make an argument that she's there as a diversion because she's there to go in and run this new thing, and everyone will be looking at her, and we can carry on with this Blackbriar thing. Or she's there to take
make
a fall.
everything look more authentic,
or to take a fall.
Yeah, or flee, or depending on So you have to trust the audience to kind of like, right, okay, well. We kind of know that, and don't
the previous films
don't have to know everything either. We don't always have to know like every single detail.
No, but the previous films were properly authored by Tony Gilroy, and he wasn't always happy with Final Cut. I mean, he said about Supremacy, for example, that it was meant to be more about Jason's sense of repentance, and he said that the final version of the film he felt didn't reflect that. But there's no doubt. I mean, I even read Tom Stoppard had a pass at this script. Well, Tom Stoppard had an uncredited pass at the script. Well,
I didn't know that.
Tom Stoppard was desperately trying to help George Lucas on, I think it was Revenge of the Sith, try and make the dialogue more authentic. Normally, you call Tom Stoppard in when you're in a bit of trouble.
Legendary playwright Tom Stoppard.
That's not to knock his abilities. He's a very talented man, but he quite often when he's brought in a script doctor sort of way.
You're in trouble.
You're normally in trouble, and I think what we've got is various people penning different bits of this. Tom Stoppard said he didn't recognise any of his stuff in the final film. None of his dialogue.
I think had he did. Have a pass of that script, it would have been a very different film.
And the other thing is, certainly Identity, I can't really speak for Supremacy because I really did forget to look, but Identity, for all the differences, does follow quite a lot of the themes and ideas of the book. Whereas if you go and read a summary of the Bourne Ultimatum, which was written in 1990, by the way, it's almost like a rematch with Carlos the Jackal. It's got nothing in common with this film. So I think they're kind of making it up on the hoof, and they've got less to go off, because of the way the stories have diverged slowly from the books. And I think it hurts the film almost immediately, but that's not to say we're doing what we do, we're going through a film and pointing to things we like and don't like. The bottom line is we all enjoyed it. It was an enjoyable film, but it's not quite at the same bar.
We had a good time, but we kind of get into the nitty gritty and sort of divide it up, really, don't we?
So she's listening to... he goes to see Marie's brother, Jason, to say about...
Daniel Bruhl in his really cameo role, literally. Blinking, you miss him.
Yeah. he just does. He looks sad and then goes off to be a Formula One driver or something.
Yeah, it goes off to appear in Marvel many years later on down the
I
line.
mean, I kind of feel like this is a bit pointless as well. I mean, not only is it a bit of a recap of like what he did
previously on Bourne.
well, it's a bit of bit what he did. The same thing he did at the end of the last one. It's like, I don't know, I'll just randomly show up, terrorise this innocent person has nothing to do with anything. And like, yeah, I'm just going to show up at your apartment, tell you your sister's dead, and then bugger off. Like,
I think as well, when he didn't shoot Brian Cox, he let Brian Cox do it himself. He said Marie wouldn't want me to. I don't think he'd made peace with her death, but there seems to be an element of him going there and almost telling him out of guilt, like she got caught up with someone like me and this happened to her, so it was my fault. And it's like her effect on Jason, I thought we'd already sort of dealt with, but
yeah,
fine. And then we've got this correspondent for the Guardian newspaper, Simon Ross, and he's digging around Jason Bourne and more specifically Operation Treadstone. And of course,
He's got a new name.
Yeah, well, he mentions Operation Blackbriar on a phone call, and this gets picked up
Yeah,
by
it's at the
their
end of one of
software.
the previous films, isn't it? He sort of says, "Oh, screw Treadstone. Treadstone's dead in the water. It's all about Blackbriar."
But of course, that now alerts the CIA that this guy exists, and that there's a big expose coming out on this thing, and they want to stop it.
yeah.
And
So-
Jason comes into London and well, he reads it in the newspaper, doesn't he? He's looking at a newspaper on the train.
Yes, reading The Guardian? No, I can't remember.
That's right, isn't it, Chris? Jason's already on his way into London and he's reading The Guardian.
Yeah, he's reading the newspaper.
But I don't know if he's already aware of this guy, because why is he heading in? But he calls him and says, "I'll meet you at Waterloo Station."
Yeah. That was pretty cool. I seem to remember reading about that back in the day, that they couldn't shut down
'Cause
Waterloo
he's been-
completely. But it was kind of like so it was a mix of kind of like extras and sort of normal commuters and that outside and everything. But I just remember it had a lot of like media coverage back in the day. The fact that they were kind of filming in and around Waterloo, and it's quite busy and it's quite a tense scene. And
So yeah, so he's obviously been regularly writing about like Jason Bourne and they basically what kind of it'd be theories about Treadstone and things like that. And he gets picked up. He gets picked up with a message from Blackbriar, so they get on his radar. And
So they send agents to basically follow and kill him. We see something like a needle, like they're going to poison him or something. But they've got shooters on him as well, which is what in the end happens.
Yeah.
And Bourne calls him and said, "You basically, if you want to survive, you need to do exactly what I say." And of course, he panics and doesn't, and he's shot.
Yeah, and I thought this was going to be like, because you got like Paddy Constantine, and I thought this is going to be like Bourne and Constantine like sort of on the run together.
Yeah,
trying to find it.
I was thinking we haven't had a dream team since 1985. Right, since those two titans of cinema appeared together in A View to a Kill, we've not had a dream team. Now we've got Dream Team: The Next Generation, but it was one scene.
Yeah. I mean, in one way, I can appreciate the kind of like, oh crap, I wasn't expecting that. But then at the same time, it's like,
do we need see? I think the CIA. I mean, if you'd never watched any films and just believed, everything you were told, it's like, well, it's it's their secret service. They're probably on the side of the good guys and all the rest of it. But we know some shady things happens. We don't always know what. But it's like the film is there to say, no, not everyone in that organisation is well-intentioned. It's like, but we knew that. They'll kill anyone if they have to, and obviously it's on orders from the Blackbriar director.
yes.
And we're introduced to his assassin as well, Paz, who we'll see again later. And then Landy's brought in to help Bosun, and I think Ross's notes. Well, they don't name the source. He's got them. Vosen's got them checking cell phones, and
doesn't he tell him like, because there's a bit like in between where he questions it, and doesn't he sort of tell him like what the source is before he runs off? Sure.
I think he told Jason,
Yes.
but Vosen has got them searching like cell phones, and he says, "Who's going to be using a cell phone at that point?" Cross-refer it to the ones that are off at that time. They cut it down to 4. Then they search the images of photos from Ross's flat and work it out to be Neil Daniels, and he's the CIA station chief in Madrid. And Bourne's already on his way there. And they realise Bourne's on his way there, and so they think they can kill Bourne and Daniels, basically, because Daniels is a leaker and Jason's the big prize. When Bourne gets there, it's empty. But Nicky Parsons is there, which feels a bit random to me.
Well, it's for, plot.
It's like, by the way, you
because
once
plot
loved
reasons.
me. You once loved me. Daniels has fled to Tangier, so he's going to fly over there and meet, Dominic Green and.
It does become a little bit like Quantum Light, Bourne Light at this stage. There's a little bit
Living
of crossover.
Daylights.
And literally the Tangier section. Literally, you can trace it all the way back to Living Daylights.
You can, but the visuals and the styles of the action, and we'll get into specifics in a minute, was aped by Quantum.
Well, it was pretty much. I mean, that's a callback all of its own, really, isn't it? So.
That's why I say the Quantum of Solace is the most directly influenced by the Bourne films. All of Craig's era bears some influence. I've never denied that. But
Yeah,
Quantum
definitely.
of Solace is a direct copy of large parts of the Bourne Ultimatum. So, she decides to help him, says he's gone to Tangier. He heads to Tangier and is looking for Daniel's location. But he's able to find out that one of the sort of Blackbriar agents has been tasked with killing him. It's a different one, actually. It's not Paz, he's called Desh. But it sounds a bit similar. Vosen, they can see that Parsons has logged in to find out about Daniels, and so he decides that he wants Parsons and Bourne killed as well, which Landy hits the roof over. And that's basically the section now, isn't it? Daniels is killed by a car bomb, which, when I think of this film, him being blown away by that car bomb, Bourne being blown out the way, that sticks in my mind.
Yeah, it's quite a memorable set piece.
Because it's quite a clever bit, because he does
drops
a
a bag. He drops
Yeah.
a bag, and you think that's the bomb, but it's actually the motorcycle.
Yeah, it's a decoy, and he actually Bourne actually makes him stop, which would ultimately end up putting him right place for a bomb.
Yeah, if he'd driven past another few feet, he may have survived.
Yeah.
So because he knew Bourne was tracking him, really clever actually. So Bourne manages to kill Desh, but this is the bit we're talking about. This is a long sort of sequence of chases across roofs. If you look at our social media tonight, we said we were recording this, the GIF is direct for him jumping onto the balcony and through like a window.
Jumping through that window. I think that was one of the big set pieces of this film, but it just screams like Quantum for me now.
Quantum did that. He breaks through the window and kills Mr. Slate. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's the
literally.
same thing, and exactly the same. And then he put on a jacket, and that's the same jacket Bourne's wearing, or at least extremely reminiscent. And Chris is right, because that is a long action sequence that's just basically Desh is killed.
I do love that the bike chase through like all the markets and everything. I think that's a really cool chase. It's done. It looks really slick. It's put together really well. It does feel like, for me, definitely the action in this film does kind of let up. But I quite admire that chase scene.
That was
the best
copied by
part.
Skyfall as well. Going up.
It's the
Well,
best
it
part
was,
of
I
the film.
know.
Sorry,
It's the
Chris.
best. It's the best part of the film. I'll be
It
honest.
is. Yeah, this is basically what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
I mean, I do think
definitely Quantum and Skyfall vibes for sure.
I do think like the fight itself is a bit underwhelming. After like that.
It speaks
huge-
of little time to choreograph. I think they were running out of time in Tangier, or wherever they filmed that actual fight. I think they were running out of time because by Bourne standards it's quite weak. Although he's hitting him with a book and stuff, and I'm thinking of John Wick.
It starts off well, shaky cam, but and then it just kind of ends with just like, oh, okay, that's it. Then.
Yeah, it's like they didn't have enough time. It speaks to a film that's being made up. I think what I want to make clear is it's not about disliking this film. If anything, we're paying Supremacy a compliment, Because if Ultimatum and Supremacy were both the standard of this film, we'd still say what a good trilogy it was. I just think Supremacy set the bar higher than this film can reach. But he then goes through Daniel's case, which is all charred, but he finds some paperwork for the CIA bureau in New York.
Well, he sends Nikki away. She dyes her hair.
She dyes her hair, which is meant to evoke Marie, and she's like, "You don't remember at all."
Yeah, just a little bit like that. I kind of felt it was a little bit forced. I was like, do you really need to do that?
I don't believe they were ever a relationship. The two of them have no romantic chemistry.
It gives her a look when she's dyeing her hair, but I think that's probably largely because it kind of reminds him of going at that time when she dyed her hair, and when it's that kind of.
But it is almost possible for one person to have chemistry. I know it sounds odd, but like the guy or the woman may convince you, and the other one doesn't. And I think it's just. Yes, she's a professional, but she's shown no hint of any of this, and it just seems like, what do we need to do? What are the emotional stakes for Bourne? Perhaps he's got to protect somebody. We don't want it just to be about him and his life. We need him to protect someone. What if he'd had a relationship with Nikki? You can hear the sort of...
You can see the brain working.
The brain working,
the gears he is grinding. Can't speak there for a minute. But I like how she smiles at the end. Like when he jumps out the window.
I love that smile at the end.
And into the river. And you just kind of think, oh, is he dead? Isn't he?
Because it's barely a smile. They say the body's not been found.
And you just think, she knows what's going on. So
see, it would have made a bit more sense had Nikki Parsons be like the leaker.
Maybe she's the mole.
And so like that gives Bourne reason to like. Obviously, it instantly makes sense why she's now a target. But it could be that that the whole what's the chap's name? Is it
which one?
The actual leaker in the film, Neil Daniels. Yeah, it could have been that they thought, or maybe it was both of them. Like she was already in league with Daniels to.
Well, that's why she was there.
Yeah.
And then that gives her a bit more of a tie to Bourne. Maybe that's what pricked her conscience, that she had feelings for Bourne, or at least didn't like what was being done to him. It didn't have to be a relationship. It never had to be anything relationship. It could just be she didn't like what had happened to such a long-time colleague of hers.
Yeah.
And not every film needs romance.
Oh no, well, just like I want to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we need a bit of a let up, don't you, from all the sort of the action and the gloom and everything as well. Like again, you don't see him smile in this film randomly. He has a serious expression all the way through, obviously because it's a very serious film.
Well, there's lacking of any puns for me. There's no.
There's no puns. There's no fruit
do you think it would have been better if on the way down the street in Tangier he just stopped and watched a Punch and Judy show? And then,
or maybe he could have eaten.
He could have eaten Julia Stiles. I'd have gone with that.
Oh, that's what I wasn't going to say. Well, I do have a fun fact about
when Paddy Considine got shot in the head. He could have gone like, that's not a way to lose your head.
Some kind of punning line at the end, perhaps.
Now we come to the call that's at the end of the last film, and I didn't do a time check because I think I said last week it was 2/3 of the way through this film. I don't know if it was or halfway or 3/4. Don't know. Didn't look at the time. But he rings in. Now, I said last week, and I'd forgotten. When you looked at all his passports in the Bourne Identity, his birthday was something like August 1969. Matt Damon himself is October 1970. And at the end of the last film, where she says, "Please wait, David Webb, 4/15/71." So I'm like, oh, he's about 6 months younger than Matt Damon then, effectively. Well, it turns out, and they find out he was actually born September 70. That was a coded message to him. And I hate it, because if she said 4/15/71 and left it at that, the reveal letter would have meant something. But he visually flashed in his mind 415 as a number on a building and 71st Street. He flashed it.
I struggled like that as a strategy that would work. Because he might go, oh, he could go, that's my actual birthday then.
Yeah.
Well, oh right, you're telling me a code, and
I mean, he's not going to look in a mirror and go, "I'm clearly 7 months older than that." Is he?
But you know what I mean? But like, even if it is a coded message, it's not quite clear that she means specifically that particular thing.
No, but he flashes it up in case we don't get it. What would have been better is if he'd played a hunch on it. If he'd no flashback, no nothing, he'd gone there. The only reason it's plausible is it's where he trained. Somewhere deep-seated in his memory is 415 71st Street. That makes sense. If she'd given him some coded message that was a fucking Chinese restaurant in Chinatown or something, then fair enough. But this is coded deep within him somewhere. So it's okay. I just wish they hadn't gone Born for Dummies again. If they hadn't gone, the audience won't get that. It's like, well, why do we need to see it flash it in his mind? Because I'd forgotten it was a code completely. I've not seen this film in years. Then it flashes in his mind. It's like, right, she's telling him to go there. And then, of course, he messages her, and Vosen intercepts it to say, go to this place, come alone. And it's like, well, that's not the place he's just seen, so we know that's a decoy. So the film just doesn't trust us.
Well, I mean, one of the things I did pick up on, which I thought was a bit odd. Now, the last film we basically got the recap of the end of the last film with the whole like Bourne's like watching this whole time, or like that kind of own that kind of thing, like just hand the phone over, she's standing right next to you, or you look tired, that kind of thing. And then almost like 5-10 minutes later, he's on the phone to Stratham's character, and he says like, well, we've been having this conversation face to face. And it's just like, well, that's you've just done exactly the same thing, but 10 minutes ago. So you almost feel like there's a bit too much repetitive. Straight, it would have worked if there was like, if it was like 40 minutes into the film again. You would have.
The other thing is, of course, I mean, I did laugh because they need to read their own script back, not just for pacing, but repetition within it. You've just said it about that. But he calls for a perimeter to be set up of a different number of blocks 3 times in about 4 or 5 minutes. Set up a perimeter, 12 blocks, right? A couple of minutes later, plans change. Set up a 4-block perimeter. 2 months later, two minutes later, I want a 3-block perimeter. And it's like, this is not playing so well. I think the other thing is, of course, they say Jason Bourne has got his eyes on Pamela Landy. She is within 1,000 metres of, or yards, I forget what they use over there. He's within 1,000 metres of this building. They didn't leave anybody in the building? He just walked straight into Strathern's office, or Vosen's office, the character's called. And, like, no one was there to spot it? Nobody?
Not even like secretaries.
I was going to say, when they all said every agent out there looking for him, did all the cleaners run out and say, well, I'll have a go as well if you like? I've seen spy films, I can do this.
I mean everyone.
Everyone. Yeah, there's not one person left in the building. We know he's good at getting around undetected, but this is the deputy director of the CIA's office with all these private files in there, which is voice activated, which he was quite cleverly recorded. The film isn't uniformly stupid by any means. The way he records his voice and then plays it to the thing, because he has a hunch it's like voice activated. So he steals everything on Blackbriars, and what you see, we still don't really know what Blackbriar is, other than it's Black Ops. It has killed foreign leaders and stuff, which is illegal. But also there's a big list of agents that have been killed. So basically they've killed their whole audit trail. And basically he steals it while he's out looking for him at the false location, but we know it's a false location. He eventually goes to the right place, hands it to Landy, who goes inside and just faxes it wherever it needs to go. Be that like, I don't know who runs the CIA. What would it be? The State Department or something? I don't know. But whoever that needs to go to, she faxed it through.
Yeah.
Which doesn't reflect well on Vosen in the last shots of the film, because he's beaten. There's absolutely no reason that he would do what he does at the end. I'm going down for this, so I might as well go down for murder as well. So, what do we do now? He gives it to her before he goes in, and Albert Finney gets a phone call. He was the guy who trained him, basically. Gets a phone call saying he's coming to you, from Scott Glenn, I think. And he says, that's all right, I'll keep him busy till your men arrive. In fact, it's Vosen he gets the call from. And basically, we get the full story from the flashback, which I remember when I first saw the film, the whole pacing of the film died from this point. It's almost like the mystery's more interesting than the answer. The whole sort of flashback to what happened in that office, if you like, didn't wildly interest me. But he had to kill somebody in there, and he had to pledge his allegiance, and he got his new name. And it was like, is that it? All right. But basically, Albert Finney's a bit wasted in this. He just keeps him busy until Vosen's men arrive, and then we're away for the car chase, aren't we?
Doesn't the car chase happen before?
Or was the car chase first?
Yeah, the car chase is before.
How does the car chase kick off then?
Well, he drives off the parking lot, and then uses a cop car.
That's from the first place. No, hang on. That's when he leaves the office.
Appends a police car with another
Yeah.
car.
Is that when he leaves the office first? They're on to the fact he's there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got that
Amazingly enough,
wrong.
it looks like it's a high-speed chase, but I think due to like local safety laws,
Yeah,
they can
they
only
didn't
go
go-
at something like 35 miles an hour.
Yeah,
or
it was
something
either
ridiculous like
30
that.
or 35. I forget which. You may
Yeah,
know,
it's
Becca.
like
So-
very safe-ish speed, and it
But
looks
the
like it's
thing
going
is,
at 100 miles
the
an hour.
problem is by this point, it's the Bourne Supremacy Redux again, isn't it? I know they've got a car chase in every one.
It's the Bourne car hunt.
I didn't
the car chase, the Bourne
Well,
manhunt.
Supremacy's car chase was totally different from Identity's, and they're both brilliant.
Exactly.
I didn't think this
Exactly.
was sufficiently different.
But also we have a bike chase and we have a foot chase. So we're kind of getting a lot of bang for our buck here.
Sorry, yes, there's the car. There's the yeah. He gets past.
And we have a foot chase too, which I
He
thought
gets
I mentioned.
past the
And
guy
Ross
who
Roof
killed
stops.
Simon Ross. He gets him at gunpoint and then doesn't fire, spares his life, and then goes on.
He says the Clive Owen line, which is like, oh no, that's the end, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's what the end is.
Look,
Yeah,
look
yeah,
what
look what they make you give.
yeah, he says two lines, doesn't he? The first one he says is, "You don't even know why you're here to kill me."
He doesn't. It's just literally just like, I'm holding a gun, but I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, this is what you make
So
you
the
give.
false memory, the memories of his sort of false birthday, trigger him to go there. And I haven't really got a lot to say there. Obviously, we've done the Albert Finney bit, and then the bit after that is all Vosen's men turn up, and he gets onto the roof by the river, thankfully.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a pool down there.
Yeah, literally. Literally, I was watching this like with a friend, we were chatting online, and literally that's the line he said. I didn't know there was a pool down there.
He gets through to Paz. Paz isn't going to shoot him, but then Vosen appears and fires at him just as he jumps. So we don't even know if he was hit. Vosen probably assumed he hit him. Paz probably assumed he hit him, and then they didn't find a body for 3 days. And I think he played dead under the water for a few minutes and then sort of swam off
Yeah. To Moby.
to Moby. And
Yeah,
then
it's
we've
like
got
the third time they've been used, but
a
this
3-day
is slightly different
search.
remits of
Pa-
extreme ways.
Parsons is somewhere warm, watching like MSNBC or whatever, and they say, Bourne, they didn't find the body, and so she just smiles, and of course the last shot mirrors the first shot of the first film, which again, you can argue how sensible that is, because part of me would like them to have cut on her smiling, but the shot's got a nice echo with the first film, and I got a little bit of that feeling I got at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Why did they try to follow that? That's actually where you end it. That's where you're done. You know?
Yeah, it's like with the ending of the last film, for example, they had to kind of write themselves. Well, they basically wrote themselves into a corner, didn't they? They tied everything all up, and then to open the next film, they kind of had to write themselves out of that corner again. So it's picking up again off the last film where they already had to write themselves into a corner and
Well, I just think that
to kind of undo it all again.
Bourne Legacy aside, which is a different beast we'll talk about next week, and I've got real problems with that film because it almost, the way they train their agents, it is almost like devaluing Jason Bourne's skills in a bit because they're basically drugs. But we'll come on to that next time. But when you get to Jason Bourne, which I've only seen once, if you go back to the 2016 summer review, Chris and I talk about it there. We definitely talked about it, me and him, but as one of many, many films, so not for that long. But I do remember being disappointed for a number of reasons. Some of them are quantifiable in that it's been 9 years. You're bringing him back, oh, you must have a great idea, and then they didn't. But part of it was him swimming off at the end of this. You just hope he can find some peace. He's dealt with his past. He's dealt with his guilt over Marie. He's done the right thing with Landy. He's made Nikki run, unfortunately, but at least he's enabled her to do the right thing. And maybe he'll find some peace. And you've echoed the first shot of the first film. Perfect. Then you bring him back 9 years later, and he never found any peace, did he? As we'll find out in a couple of weeks' time when we review it. And I think, I'd rather have left it on that note of, possible hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's like, well, what do you expect? You sort of like you have to go back to the well, and it's like they'll live happily ever after. Well, not really.
No, I know, it's the same with Star Wars now. No, I never
Yeah.
expected them to completely stop making Star Wars product, but when you completely undermine the end of like Return of the Jedi and make that trilogy effectively meaningless, that's not good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, what's it? I was thinking. I was like, I think I said to you with I was talking about the new Jurassic Park film, Jurassic World,
Which I haven't seen yet. You two have, though.
which you haven't seen. And I think I mentioned to you on chat, like like compare that to like how they deal with the old characters, like from the original film, like they are exactly where they are, pretty much. As they
It's
were.
what they did with Han Solo. We want
Yeah.
him as a rogue
still
smuggler,
look the same.
so we'll undo undo all his life
And
progress.
it's like you compare that to say Top Gun Maverick, where it's clearly the same character, but there has been some changes, but you can clearly identify that. Well,
That's
this is
Maverick. That is
Yeah.
Maverick.
but an older version that has like gone through some stuff.
And
you know what I mean?
he's still got a bit of immaturity about him in some ways.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can also see he's carrying like nearly 4 decades of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still retain the same character beats, but yeah, where's
exactly.
like the OG
He's
trio?
grown, he's
Jurassic
developed.
Park? No.
But you can recognise him like this is the same guy, but but whereas what everyone else tends to do is kind of just revert back to like how they were, and it's just such a waste, and it's just like it's actually probably a crime to storytelling, really. When you look at it, it's just it's really
The
redundant.
problem is
It's lazy.
with the way cinema, with the way social media is now, it's very difficult in that when you look at The Force Awakens, they basically went, let's give them the Han Solo they love, which isn't somebody who's been married for 30 years and responsible with 2 kids and all the rest of it. It's actually the smuggler who's like gallivanting around with Chewie doing dodgy deals.
Yeah. Which I think is a misreading. I think it's a misreading of it.
I completely agree. But then Ryan Johnson comes along and says, well, in 30 years, Luke's not going to be the same man. And if the Empire effectively rose again, he's going to be quite disillusioned. And so many of the fans went, that's a fucking betrayal. He should be a Jedi hero. I think there's a little bit of validity in that argument that if you've got that much investment in the character, maybe you would want him to be a wiser old man. But I don't know. They're a bit damned if they do and damned if they don't. But I just think sometimes, Indy finished in the perfect place and then they brought it back years later. And now they're bringing it back years later again. Sometimes these gambles work, but sometimes a film just finishes on a perfect shot. And I just think, like, that's where you leave it. That's perfect. In fact, if I'd been editing the film, I wouldn't have had the intelligence to leave it there. I'd have probably cut on Nicky smiling, because that's just a hint to us he's still alive. But actually, because it mirrors the first shot of the first film, they left it on the right shot. For me, I just think that the less you can think about the film, the better it is. And that's not because it's stupid. It isn't. It's not like, what films do I think are stupid? The second Jurassic World film. Really, really dumb, the moment you think about it. There's a couple of the Bond films where the moment you think about them, the GoldenEye's a beloved film, but you think about it for 5 minutes and none of
The
it
plot
makes any
falls
sense.
away
Yeah, falls apart.
tremendously.
Falls apart incredibly.
But it's still amazing to be on the big screen, though. Myself and we were all blown away by it. But yeah, it's a lot of those. There are quite a lot of films that hold up like that. You just think about it and it just all just falls away. You just think, oh god, suspend your disbelief.
This isn't falling apart because it's stupid.
Because it's
It's
a load of
falling
crap.
apart. It's not even falling apart, but it's damaged by the fact that if you've seen any great number of films in your life, you can see the meetings. You can see we best put a little image in his mind there to tell the audience.
Yeah, you can kind of see how they, by committee, you can see how they wrote it.
I don't know that they said we need a love interest, but I can almost guarantee in a meeting somewhere they said we need someone for Jason to protect in this portion of the film. So they crammed her in as a love interest. There's no loving in the film. They don't hook up or anything, which was a wise decision. But you can also see that they went into the film with the idea of, well, we definitely want to finish it in New York, so let's get onto the logistics of how we do a car chase in New York early, because we're going to have to do it on the streets. So they probably blocked that out quite early.
They probably were sort of doing it like on the hoof, as I say, because they started production without really with just the hint of a decent script, really, and kind of had to do it as they went along. So there's always things you've got to be kind of knocked out afterwards, really, haven't they? So
yeah, and it's not like I say, it's not that it's stupid. I'm not saying don't think
it's
about
similar
it.
to Quantum as well. They had all the difficulties with the strikes and various other
They did.
industrial issues going on at the time, and you can kind of see, that's probably why they ended up with the shortest film in the series.
This film was released a couple of months before that strike started. This one.
It was, but I was just trying to say that there are production issues that you can see that do eventually appear on the screen.
But I think the way I was just going to summarise that it's not that plot points don't make sense. They tend to. It's not that character actions don't make sense, because they tend to. It's that you can see it all being held together with a bit of sticking plaster this time. There's like Chris says about the fight with Desh, that they haven't got time to do it properly, so they haven't done it properly. The car chase, they've worked out what streets they can use, but they haven't worked out how to make it sufficiently different from Supremacy's car chase. The love interest, they've got to put something in there because Bourne needs to protect somebody. The clue from Landy, I take Chris's point, it's an opaque clue, it could be missed, but then what has she got to lose? She may as well go and try it. But that building meant something to him, so it might trigger something. But we don't, that's the one time in the film we don't need to see what goes on in his head, because you've just told us where he's going. That should come as that's clever, a bit later on. So it's a bit like the Bourne Supremacy, but rushed. It's the Bourne Supremacy if it was rushed and the script had too many cooks. I think that's the way I would summarise it.
And is that final thoughts?
I think all I would add to that as a final thought is that we've done this about a number of films. I remember doing it years ago about Back to the Future Part 2. If you listen to that show, you'd think I hate that film. And I think it's like really inventive. But we were just doing what we do as we go through it. It's like that bit doesn't work as they would like it to work. And that's a bit of a betrayal of Biff's character and stuff like that. And once you take out the sheer invention of that film, the first film's a lot more grounded for such a sci-fi concept. Marty's kids looking identical to him and stuff like that. That's not how it works. You see it with Star Trek now. Every generation of Data's creator looks exactly the same. It's just Brent Spiner, and has been for centuries. The inbreeding in that family must be rife. But I think it's not that it's stupid. I'm damning it with faint praise. On first viewing, when I hadn't seen Supremacy, I knew that for a while, I knew I didn't enjoy it quite as much. But I think it was things like when he finally met Albert Finney, I found that scene a bit flat. And I knew I didn't enjoy the car chase as much as I did with the one in... I mean, they even finished the same way, just a massive crunch into a pillar. That's how the one in the tunnel finishes in the second film. I knew I didn't like it quite as much, but I thought quality-wise they were probably of a piece. But I just had a preference for the second one. Having watched them now a week apart, having probably not seen them since 2007 or 8, Supremacy is a far stronger film. And I would go as far... And Identity is a far stronger film as well. It's not in a different universe of quality. It's good. It's a decent Bourne film. But I think it's the weakest of the first three.
Well, this podcast is going to be quite short, isn't it? I thought
it depends how long your fun facts are going to be.
It depends how long. Well, I've only got 4.
Yeah, and we're going to do an Albert Finney career retrospective to sort of pad it out a bit.
And also, we've got extra news.
Saturday night, Sunday morning.
Saturday night. We'll go through his back catalogue. Through the kitchen sink, through to the swinging 60s.
Wolfen, one for Charlie there. Big Wolfen fan.
Yep, definitely. And also, listeners, we've got extra news about our future exploits coming up soon as well.
We'll do that in a bit, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that in a bit, definitely. But it's just one of those things where, if there isn't much to it, or if it's not very good, or if it's a very short film.
I know, but such a short review of this film makes it seem like it was really bad, and it's not. It really isn't.
This is it. Exactly. But if it's a big chunker of a film, if he's a bit of a chomp, or if it's quite meaty, if there's a lot to it, then it will be 3 hours long, like No Time to Die, for example. But yeah, that's not the case here. I mean, obviously, you start plucking holes at it, and obviously there were issues on production.
So much more happened in Identity, for example, didn't it?
Well, it really did. It really did, you know. But I'm quite intrigued. I'm intrigued to check out the last two films in this series, because I've not seen them. I think they've been on TV recently, and I've got them recorded. Too cheap to buy the DVDs. But that'll be quite interesting to kind of see. And obviously, we have the 5 or 6 year gap again, like we did with the Bond films, between like Ultimatum, Legacy, and then Bourne. So, but now, as I say, I think when you start to look at like the plot, like minutiae of like the plot and storyline, it does kind of fall away a little bit. You've got some really big names here, as we mentioned at the top of the show, like Daniel Bruhl, David Chapin, who I totally forgot, Scott Glenn, oh my god, Paddy Considine, and Albert Finney, oh my gosh. It just seems to use these amazing talents so sparingly. Obviously, Daniel Bruhl wasn't the big star that he is now. I maintain that it probably was that breakout film, 2004, and then obviously Glorious Bastards, etc., etc. But check it out, and check out Rush as well. Highly recommend it, even though I knew nothing about Formula One.
But you don't
but highly
need to.
enjoyed that film.
You don't need
No,
to.
this is it. I found it really accessible, really well directed for sure. But yeah, where was I? But yeah, no, it's one of those things it uses, you know, kind of, for me, I kind of thought, well, you know, the cast certainly does pack a punch, brings out big guns, and uses them really, really sparingly to the point where it's almost a fault. But for me, the high points of this film, but there's perhaps a little bit, the Lower Manhattan car chase, for example, I did think the shaky cam, as it is, was a little bit too overused, and for me it did kind of call back like content pre-titles where you perhaps don't quite know what's going on. Or it's a little bit disorienting. However, that said, it's still, in terms of the action, in terms of these real in-camera set pieces, you know, Greengrass leaves little, you know, to do with CGI. He tries to do everything in camera as physically as you can. There are some sort of visual tricks, some sort of CGI elements there that it does date a little bit. Obviously, this was 2006, 2007. You know, technology's moved on a little bit since then. But yeah, for me so far, the first 3 films, it is kind of, for the action, for me it's one of the best. But in terms of plot, the story, it's quite flimsy. But still, no, really enjoyable film, and worthy entry into the series. Sorry, deep breath. Anyway, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I think this is. If you'd asked me going in, you know, before watching it, I'd say this is probably the better of the 3 so far. But yeah, I think I kind of with Dave. I think I prefer the second one. While I do like the non-stop, like, relentlessness of it. The story itself doesn't really hold much water. So just a few bits here and there, bit too much shaky cam. It's not as quite as tight as it could be, but other than that, I think it's decent enough. But that's about as much I can really say, really. But the reason why I'm struggling is because I just don't know too much about it, Dave.
I don't either. I mean, I put it on, and you know, I was waiting for him to like argue.
You blag it, don't you?
I was waiting for him to chat with Judi Dench, and it didn't happen. and then I thought he was gonna like not have sex with Camille, and to be fair, he didn't. And then like I thought he'd be like, I never left, and that would be it. But
Yeah, he gives him a sort of a love knot, doesn't he?
And then I'm like, who the fuck's David Webb?
Who's this guy? Why was he not? He doesn't have the right date of birth.
And I'm
What's
just
going
like,
on?
he was born 3 times. Did like his mum stuff her back up there 3 times? You know, like, she had him in 70, put him back up there to come out again the following year, and then again in 71. And then she got confused as to what to call him. And then like, you know,
He was called Bourne, you know.
and
So
he probably wanted to work for Firestone. He probably wanted to sell tyres.
this is it.
So Becca, help us out.
He's trashed enough cars. So yeah, unfortunately, I've only got 4 fun facts for you this week. We've had quite a lot going through about Tom Stoppard. That was an amazing fact. I never knew that. Let's have a look. Yeah, fun fact number 1. I think I might have said one of these last week, so apologies if I'm repeating myself. Bourne Ultimatum was the only film out of the trilogy to be nominated and win an Oscar. It won all 3 that it was nominated for.
What was
fun
it
fact number
nominated
2.
for? Do you know?
I've actually got it written down, but that section of the page is missing, and I cannot
That's all
remember.
right. I'll see if I can find
So
it. Hang on.
I do apologise. Fun fact number 2.
I've got it. I've got it.
Yeah, that's what it's literally on IMDb.com.
Best film editing, best sound editing, best sound mixing. So it
That
won.
was it. I knew it was more the technical.
It
awards.
basically won both sound awards because there's editing and mixing.
Yeah.
The
It won all the
differences
technical
between them are
awards.
quite subtle. If I sat and thought about it, I could tell you what they are, and the names aren't entirely clear. It's not quite
No.
what it. And best film editing is taking the piss, to be honest.
It's one of those things, isn't it? If it's not going to win on like sort of cast or script or whatever, then it's going to pick up some technical awards. That's kind of what we hope for Bond as well. So, fun fact number 2, which is taken from a random fact website. The beginning of Ultimatum takes place directly after Supremacy, but the production gap was several months, so it was already January and it was too cold to film. So by the time they moved elsewhere, they had to fake all the snow, because otherwise it thawed out. Made up of paper and snow, obviously, because it wouldn't melt. Paper and fake snow, like foam, because obviously it wouldn't melt, because it was already getting too hot. Fun fact number 3: the cafe Nicky chooses meeting place in Tangier is the famous Café de Paris, which was so I imagine it as kind of like almost, obviously not that kind of stuff, but from like sort of classic era, maybe when it was very much like an international city. It'd often be a favourite haunt of like spies and emissaries. So there's a lot of kind of like spies and mysterious goings on associated with Café de Paris, apparently. And also, who sends a fax these days? Pamela sends quite a lot of faxes towards the end of this film, and the number of flip phones as well. Obviously, that was the Uruguay technology back in the day, but nowadays nobody has a flip phone. Nobody sends a fax, except maybe if you're in Japan, because they're at once in the future and stuck in the past. But apparently, one of the when she's kind of faxing over all the agents that Bourne is supposed to have killed, one of them is Richard Chamberlain, who of course was the OG Bourne in the series in the 80s, as we mentioned at the very start of this Bourne retrospective series. So that's my 4 fun facts about this film.
That's 4/5 fun, folks.
Yes, I'll try to bring 5 next time.
That's all right.
Yeah, these films aren't very fun, so
They're not really.
No, hopefully next time.
We really thought this was the end of Bourne. I mean, Greengrass expressed no interest. He went on to do Green. I got this wrong last time.
Green Zone.
Green Zone.
Green Zone, that's it. Green Zone.
He went to do Green Zone, and then obviously United 93, and I think United 93 was after that.
No, I think it was actually before this, because it came out before.
Was it 2005?
Yeah.
Was it?
It came out before Casino Royale.
Right.
So it's
Fine. Okay. So.
Yeah, that was his.
But basically, yeah. But he went on to do Green Zone anyway with Matt Damon. They
Yeah.
clearly like working with each other. Damon said exactly what Bale said about Nolan. I won't do the part again without him.
Yeah,
And
fair
Greengrass said, I've really got no interest in doing it. I've said everything I wanted to say. And years went by, and the studio said, we don't want to leave this property. This film did 444 million at the worldwide box
They
office.
generally did okay, didn't they?
It's the highest grossing Bourne film. Jason Bourne did over 400. I can't remember the exact figure, but I know it did over 400. Next week's film we'll talk about when we get there, but it grossed somewhere between the first two. But obviously they thought there was more to tell with this whole sort of Treadstone Blackbriar world. So they came out with the film we're going to cover next week with a star with which we're very familiar. We'll come back to that in a bit. My memory of that film is not good. But I did see it for free back in the sort of See Film First days. I got a free ticket to that.
Oh god, yeah, I remember that.
I did as well, actually.
Yeah, it was good fun.
I went to see it on a Sunday morning with Malcolm, who you met at my wedding. And it was like a Sunday morning, and we came out and we were both baffled by it. But for reasons that will become clear when we talk about it, because I don't like what it does to the whole world in terms of a plot idea. But it was more about where the film ends. Because if you take the film on its terms, he's good in it. Rachel Weisz is really good in it. As I recall, I've seen it once, 10 years ago. And I remember the action being all right, because I mean, he'd done like Mission Impossible 4 the year before, and that would have been out after they were making this probably. But he was really good at hand to hand. He was really good. So I just thought but yeah, it's where the film ends. But we'll come back to that one. And then obviously 4 years after that, Greengrass and Damon come back for And I think by then that they looked like analog men in a digital world. It was just there was just something about Greengrass now in his 60s doing all this sort of high tech bollocks. It was like, you know, it was like 24, but everything's running on like DOS. So we'll get to that next week. In a couple of weeks. I definitely thought that had a slightly lower IQ,
That
but
kind
again,
of
I've seen
style, it quickly becomes a bit passé, doesn't it? Like everyone starts doing it. Like, you know, it's like Chris said, you know, you start copying it and it's not cool
Yeah,
anymore.
this is the era of 24 as well, when they were constantly on phones to each other and, you know, trying to decode, sharpen up pictures, CCTV pictures of somebody and cross-referring it with their file and send it through to my phone and all that shit. That was this era, yeah. Well, yeah, he didn't have a fax machine in his car, Jack Bauer, to be fair.
I was just so blown away. I was like, when was the last time you sent a fax? I mean, listeners, if you work an office job and you still fax, I'm sure it does happen.
Pulls over to the side of the road because it's like telegram for Mr. Bauer.
Carrier pigeon, you know. No, I'm sure there are businesses who do still send faxes.
So yeah, we got 2 more to go in this series. One of which is kind of back with this crew, but it's almost a different generation. Even though it's only 9 years, which goes by in the blink of an eye. We've been going 7, but
that's scary, isn't it?
But
oh, gosh.
Although it goes in a blink of an eye, it just felt a different world by the time it came back. The 2000s were with that post 9/11, which is a cliche to say in itself, but it definitely had an effect on about 9 to 11 years of cinema, depending on how you count on it.
It really did. It just changed the landscape irreparably, really.
And I just think like 2016 was just a different time, not necessarily a better time. Christ, Trump was elected later that year. But,
that was scary, wasn't it?
But what I'm saying is, it just I didn't have a problem. Well. I didn't have a problem with Bourne coming back at all, but it just somehow didn't fit. But I've only seen the 2 films we're covering next once each. That said, there is something we're talking about covering where I've dealt with the constituent part bits more often. Becca, would you like to make the announcement?
So yeah, I'm not quite sure. We need to work out the fine details, but yes.
Prompted by a message from Chris the other day, showing an interest in doing this.
Yes, what we'd like to do is we'd like to go through, read and review all the Ian Fleming James Bond books, starting with Casino Royale and working our way through. Listeners, we'd like to have you along. Obviously, we won't be doing it in video, just as our normal podcast as we do. Maybe perhaps thinking of some questions that we can ask ourselves, generate a bit of discussion. But whether or not you read it in book form or listen to the audiobook, that's fine. Either is fine, both is fine.
I think I've got both for every Fleming.
Actually, a friend has kindly sent the file to me. I'll send it on to yourselves, Chris and Dave, if you want to save you any pennies. I don't know if you've got audio.
No, I've got them all on Kindle.
Oh, fabulous! Yeah,
but I've now got all Fleming on audiobook as well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so listeners, that's what we'd like to do. We'd like to sort of read and review all the Ian Fleming James Bond books. And that will include short stories. I don't know if we'll include like Diamond Smugglers or Thrilling Cities, depending on what other of you guys say, but because they're not directly born.
Well, at the moment we're going to cover the 14 releases by Ian Fleming.
We'll do that. So
the short stories, for example. So Octopussy and the Living Daylights, we'll
include those.
We will do. Like where there's a book of short stories and there's 3 stories in there, we'll do that as one show. We'll do a show. We'll do a show for each release, starting with Casino Royale. If we enjoy it and Chris enjoys them as well, because now we've announced it, Chris has to read them all.
But luckily, they're generally quite easy reads. They're quite short.
If we get to the end and he goes, "I love Bond, but I'm glad that's over," then we're not going to turn to him and say, "Do you want to do Forever and a Day next?"
Do you want to carry on and do the John Gardner continuation novels?
I don't think we're going to do it. I don't think we're going to do it in one hit. I don't think.
No, I think we'll probably do it like we do the commentaries, like interspersed, perhaps in between a series, or because we're not coming to the end of Bond, but we're kind of running out of Bond. Whereas obviously we've reviewed all the films. We've only got maybe 3 or 4 commentaries left to do. Yeah. So it's just like what other aspects of Bond content can we move on to?
I didn't want to spoil the announcement, so I didn't spell it out. Chris wrote to us the other day because we've got like a messenger chat for the 3 of us. And we got a separate one with Charlie as well when we talked to him. But we were talking the other day, and he said, "Where would you start if you've never read a Bond book?"
Yeah, we had differing views, didn't we?
Yeah, well, for context, I mean, obviously you go Casino Royale, obviously, but
Yeah.
because
And then
like,
Dave was like, "Oh no, you need to start with
because-
Forever in a Day." I was like, "Oh, that's an idea."
because I was like, I've just got Audible, so I was like, oh,
I like
was
the
like,
Fleming continuity.
and I was like, oh, shall I listen to the Anthony Horowitz
Ooh.
Bomb? And then I started asked the question, what am I best starting with, or but then I really should read the Bond books
I
as
think
well.
the only Bond I really love is that timeline, if you like. So I like Fleming. Not every Fleming book, I have to say. There's one or two I don't like, but we'll talk about them, and I'll even read the one I tend to skip.
Yeah, I'd rather we didn't skip any. I know some of them are very difficult.
Anthony Horowitz is the only author. There are continuity errors, like you'll read in, I think it's Casino Royale, that he smoked this custom brand of cigarettes for like 20 years. And then, in Forever in a Day, you see him discover them for the first time, like a year earlier. But aside from a couple of continuity errors, he's captured it. It could be a lost Fleming. It totally could. And because it's in the same timeline, when I read that timeline, I just read from Forever in a Day through to... Now, I must admit, the other two that are sort of in the timeline is Devil May Care, which is Sebastian Faulks. And that was released for Fleming's 100th birthday in 2008. And Solo, who wrote Solo? William Boyd, wasn't it?
William Boyd, yep.
And I don't really like either of those books very much. And I know this will be blasphemy to some because it's really, really liked, but I don't really like the fucking Kingsley Amis one either very much.
What?
I like the first act of it. I like the kidnap in the first act, which I won't spoil, but that's it. I got quite bored with it. In fact, I sat down to read it one time, forgetting I'd read it 2 months before.
Mind you, that is a bit of a chunk though. It was one of the longer ones, isn't it?
I just got bored with it. So really, I'm only interested in things that are strictly in the Fleming timeline, and really Fleming or Horowitz, because Horowitz is a brilliant mimic.
Definitely. I think what we'll do anyway, just for
let's do Fleming. Let's do Fleming
first. To read, we'll stick with Fleming for sure.
We'll do Fleming.
Literally
first.
start Casino Royale and end 14 books
I,
later.
I will say this: he's got the titles right. Like Forever a Day sounds like a good title for.
Well, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Original title.
With a Mind to Kill is pretty good as well.
Yeah, that's really good, definitely. Like, when it first kind of came out, people were like, what's going on? But in the context of the story, it's pretty spot on.
I think we need to sort of get out of we need to start thinking outside the box for Bond movies and be like for Bond titles. You don't have to sort of like be die of this.
Never under die. Never in a die today, tomorrow. Yeah, I know.
Tomorrow tells another die.
The man with the dead tomorrow.
Die to kill tomorrow.
What I would say about Fleming, nothing's for everybody, but if you get on with it, very few.
And then some of the Gardner ones, and even some of the Rowan Benson ones,
he's driving a Saab and drinking and smoking silk
a little bit like Bond title generator. I think there's one called like. I've got them on my shelf somewhere. Bond shelf of doom.
The funniest one, and I mean no offense.
Nobody Lives Forever, and those kind of Bond-esque titles.
He's a friend of mine on Facebook, and he's a really nice man. And his Bond books weren't bad, but I'm sorry, The Facts of Death was fucking hilarious as a title.
It's a great title.
The Facts of Death.
The Facts of Death instead of The Facts of Life. But no, I love his titles. Oh my god, I think Benson's probably like
Zero
aside from
cool.
Young Bond, it's probably like and Horowitz my favourite continuation author, definitely.
Yeah.
But I just feel Gardner's legendary, but I kind of feel dated horribly.
That's a fact or facts.
The facts.
As in, like, I've sent you a fact
of death.
So not fun facts.
No.
Facts of death.
As in, I've sent you a fax. You should get it.
Oh, facts, yeah.
But no. So the thing I would say to look out if you want to read along with us and you've never read Fleming. I'm not going to go into it now. I'm not inviting real conversation on it particularly, but there are some dated attitudes, and just be aware of that.
I think we can discuss it whenever we get round to it. We will discuss
it. It only bothers me in one place, honestly, because it's through all the books, but it only really pisses me off in one of them because it just gets too much. I thought, why am I fucking reading this?
Reading this 60-year-old crap.
His books average something like 250 pages. They're not super long.
No,
and I would go as far as they're a bit potboiler. He's really good at description, because I get bored with that in books. You get an author describing the sunrise, and it's like, I don't care, the sun's up. What's happening?
Beautiful description.
But his descriptions of food and clothing and the environment's excellent.
You can literally smell everything. You can taste everything. Oh my god, leaps off the page.
The final thing I think I'd say about Fleming is, I don't think I can think of an author who finishes a book as well as he does. The last 20 or 30 pages of Casino Royale, you're itching to get to the next one.
I would kind of argue like the opening of it as well is probably up there for me as like one of those great iconic. It's like the opening to Pride and Prejudice or Tale of Two Cities. You know, it's one of those really iconic opening lines. You think, oh my god.
It is the truth. You sweetly acknowledge that women in a nightclub at 3 a.m. are in want of a shag.
Oh, very sexy, you know.
Yes, that would be more like Bond style, wouldn't it?
No, this is it, pretty much, yeah. But it's one of those great kind of iconic openings for me, anyway. I know that's just stupid, and I know a lot of people just say, "Oh, Fleming isn't really in that class." It's like, well, it is.
Charlie Higson pastiches it in Silverford.
He does, definitely. Guys, also listeners, if you haven't had a chance to check out any of the Young Bond books, highly recommend it. Higson, Steve Cole. I highly recommend it as well, even if you think obviously you perhaps are not the target audience.
If you're going to join us, and
you'll hugely enjoy them, definitely.
You'll only find out at the end of an episode what we're doing next. I mean, we know our film series, but Fleming will throw in on cue. Really, it'll be, I need to read that. I can get through that today. Yeah, because Chris will tell us when he's ready. And Becca's read it so many times. Becca could probably get by without reading it, but I need to read it again. I've read Casino Royale 2 or 3 times, but I need to read it again.
So I did it for the Zuritsky thing, and then obviously we had our own as a little group that I'm part of when on Instagram, and that's kind of, so it was like a sort of a ladies group, and then we kind of spawned our own reading group. So we did it for that. So I kind of read it. Well, I've read it many times before, but like in the space of like lockdown, for example, I might have read it sort of 4 or 5 times.
That would be a brilliant name for a women's bond group: Knitting and Bondage.
Knitting. This is no, we are ladies who bond. Thank you very much.
All right. So if you want to join us to read them, and you want to get a head start, we're in for all of them, but we'll just name the first 3 in the right order and leave it with you. So the first is Casino Royale, written and released in 1953. Becca.
Yes.
The second book is Live and Let Die, and the third book is Moonraker.
Well, we'll put a tweet out to confirm this.
Yeah, now, Casino Royale is superb. Surprisingly short, superb. You can see why they had to add bits to make a film out of it, but it's a very good story. Live and Let Die I struggle with, that's the only one. Moonraker has nothing to do with the film and it's utterly magnificent. Really
good. Also, listeners, I can recommend, if you haven't checked them out before, BBC Radio 4 have previously done some really amazing radio dramas. I think they've pretty much done all of the Bonds now.
They have.
With I've forgotten his name, Gustav Graves from Night of the Day, Toby Stevens as Bond, and he is fabulous.
He's voiced 1 or 2 of the books as well. I mean, I think
he has. Yeah, he's
the latest one, the latest Horowitz is voiced by Rory Kinnear. And Rory Kinnear drew the short straw and had to do Live and Let Die, so he had to say like Negro and stuff quite a lot, and other words and other less polite words of I can't remember. There are various versions over the years, because I had a version of Casino Royale once that was voiced by Rufus Sewell.
Oh, Rufus Sewell.
But the currently released version, I know Dan Stevens has done some of them.
He'd be a great Bond.
And there is one book that's from a female perspective, so Rosamund Pike voices The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yes, that's fabulous. I kind of think there's a version of one of the stories that Joanna Lumley reads as well, but I think it's a different adaptation.
Hang on a minute, I'm just going to look them up because I've got Audible right in front of me. I'm just
it may not be an Audible, it may just be another version. But just for listeners, if you want to, you can check out the BBC Radio audio dramas.
Casino Royale is narrated by Dan Stevens. I know that Live and Let Die is Rory Kinnear. Moonraker is.
I've got a collection which is very similar. So I've got Dan Stevens with Live and Let Die, Casino Royale, Live and Let Die, Rory Kinnear, Moonraker, Bill Nighy,
Bill Nighy, yeah,
and then Diamonds Are Forever is Damien Lewis. That's a collection
from Russia with Love From Russia with Love is Toby Stevens.
Ooh.
Just the ones I can see for a minute. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is David Tennant.
Yes, that's really good.
Martin Jarvis does You Only Live Twice, which is an odd choice.
Yeah, that's a bit strange, but yeah, Martin Jarvis. But he's also the voice of Ian Fleming, or the narrator in the radio dramas. But I could listen to him read the phone book.
They're good.
He's
They're
fabulous.
good. But Casino Royale, a lot of people say it's the best book. I'm not sure I'd say it was my favourite. I think it finishes really strong, but it's top like 3 or 4 probably for me.
Wasn't it From Russia with Love that was kind of like President Kennedy's top book or something of the year or something like
The
that?
last time I read them, From Russia with Love was my favourite.
And some of them are quite similar to the story as well.
From Russia with Love, well, obviously from Russia with Love, the minor differences are it's a Spectre, not a Lecter. It's obvious why they changed that.
Cool.
You get more of Red Grant's backstory, and it's not Spectre, it's Smersh. But apart from that, they're really similar. They're really similar.
Spectre comes along a bit later, doesn't he? You know, they are smashed for a while.
Yeah.
Then Spectre comes along a little bit later on.
But that's a very faithful book. Majesties is very good. But
very brilliant, heartbreaking, as we all know.
a couple of the films that don't have such a great reputation I like. Like, most people talk down Goldfinger, and I loved it. I thought the book was superb.
Yeah, really good.
Dr. No, I was a bit lukewarm on. Diamonds, I was lukewarm on. From The Spy Who Loved Me is really interesting. Some of the stories are brilliant. Like Quantum of Solace is just a guy talking to Bond at a dinner party about
He's
a
in
couple.
a party, isn't he?
He's just listening to a story about some couple, but it's brilliant.
And likewise, when View to a Kill is like in a meeting, you know, Bond
Yeah.
in a meeting.
Yeah, some of the stories.
In Daylight is a flashback.
I mean, the Hildebrand rarities about them catching a fish.
Yeah.
We're trying to catch a fish, there's a murder, and you meet Milton Crest and all that. You can see bits that have been repurposed into different films, but
Like
I'm not an
Lady
expert.
does contain about
There are books.
Fabergé eggs.
There are books in the series I've like only read once, and the most I've read any of them is maybe 3. So Becca knows them better than me, but I have read them all, and we will be doing them. I'm currently listening to Lord of the Rings because we got Tolkien coming up soon. But as soon as Chris is ready and said, right, I'm reading Casino Royale, or I'm halfway through, Becca and I will rip through
We'll
a
get
couple
on
of
it.
episodes, and we'll record an episode.
Well done. I must admit, yeah, coming up to Tolkien, it's one of those books where like you've never actually read. I've read The Hobbit, but yeah.
The endless
I've
poetry
seen
and
all the
songs
films,
gets
obviously.
on your tits, honestly.
But it's one of those books that's always on your to-read list, and you've never got all the way through. So I'm kind of like slogging my way through. So.
I'm listening now anyway. Well, I started with The Hobbit, and I thought, why am I doing this? We're covering the Lord of the Rings first.
I might do that.
Because we're doing them in release order, so it's pointless reading The Hobbit first.
I might. The Lord of the Rings might something I might get on Audible, because there's some versions with Andy Serkis reading them.
Nice.
I wonder who voices Gollum in those.
We can all do our Gollum impressions, can't we? So.
Yeah, but I reckon that's I've tried to read Lord of the Rings, and it's a bit of a.
It's a slog.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy reading, but yeah,
there might be something that might go down better as an audiobook.
I would just like to be able to talk about the differences. I don't need to talk about everything they didn't put in or cut, but silly little things like there's about 17 years between Bilbo disappearing and like Frodo going off on his travels.
Yeah, it's a big gap, isn't it?
And there's a bit more backstory. When I first read them, because I've never read them all the way through, I liked Fellowship, which is effectively 2 books, and then Two Towers I gave up about halfway through. I was struggling with it, but I'm listening to it now. But I'm listening to it as I go for walks. But what I'm doing is, if I get distracted or I find I'm not listening or I fell asleep, I do go back. I am absolutely making sure I'm paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they haven't left the Shire yet. I'm very early. So
no, they'll go from the epic
and I think the first book's like 17 hours. So
oh Christ.
It's going to take me about 50-60 hours to get through them all.
I think we are going to have to break this series up into chunks when we get to do Tolkien, so I'll just be like, oh. But I'm looking forward to it.
Let's get back to this series, Becca. So before we get to that, social media, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976.
Yeah, you can find me on Steering Tracks, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into Bond. It'd be nice to sort of keep the Bond flame
we'll chat
alive.
offline about when, but it is coming soon. We're not suggesting this and then throwing it at the bottom of a list. This is complementing everything
Yeah, coming
else.
soon. We just need to figure out some dates, but we will be doing the Do You Expect Us to Read book club coming soon.
Yes.
It's still going to be
but-
called Do You Expect Us to Talk, folks?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, this is an offshoot, but it's just under
Well, it gives me a reason to actually read the fucking things, because you know, as a Bond fan, I should at least know the fucking books. So
I hope you like them. I like them very much, but you do think of them as their own thing. When I'm reading Bond, it's a very different character to the film version, even the more faithful ones. So anyway, social media.
Oh yes, so right. So you can find the episode on Podbean, which is should go live as well as the UK, where all the other episodes will be.
And you can find us, Do You Expect Us to Talk, on Facebook. On Twitter, we are at Expect Us to Talk. On YouTube, Do You Expect Us to Talk? We're also on Podbean, as Chris said, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbay, wherever you like to listen to us. But wherever you are, please kindly give us a nice review and hopefully a 5-star rating. And also, if you're on the socials and you like what you hear, post a link to wherever you might find us on your socials, on Facebook and Twitter. Share it with your friends. It helps us to rank higher in the ratings and attract more listeners. Thank you very much. And also, if you want to, you can email us expecttotalk@gmail.com, or you can always get in touch with us via our Facebook page and Twitter. Thank you very much.
And we do answer.
Very occasionally. I haven't checked the email for ages, actually.
No, to be fair.
Having said that, I must get on and have a look. Probably for the spam.
Okay, so we continue with the Bourne series next time, Becca, which means?
We Expect to Talk will return with Bourne Legacy.